Yeah, like Admiral Brown said, this isn't going to be a keynote address or anything. It's going to be more of just me talking and saying, here's trying to synthesize some things and pull some thoughts together. I did, even though I'm scared to do this and use some PowerPoint with General Broadmeadow sitting in the front row. I did bring some PowerPoint with me to help, because I thought some visuals would be important for us, to help synthesize some of this information. And there's been a lot that I know. I've written down a ton of notes, and I'm really looking forward to getting after this. And on my last chart, the takeaways, I'll give some guidance out as to, where I think we need to move forward with and get some things done. Let me also just echo, since I have the mic here at the end, thank Christopher Newport University for the venue. And for everything they've done. I told Dr. Bush, I think I saw a few unicorns running down the courtyard out there. The butterflies were fluttering around, but this is a utopian place, and it certainly has the seafaring spirit built into its DNA, with the Mariner Museum right next door. And then you look down the road, you got the Army Home of Transportation at Fort Eustis. Right there. Go visit the museum, the Army Transportation Museum right there. Absolutely outstanding. So really, from an intermodal standpoint, we have all the seafaring DNA right here. So it's a perfect venue to really bring all of this together. And I thank Christopher Newport and Dr. Bush for that. I also want to thank NDTA and Admiral Brown for certainly your leadership, sir, and everything you do to help bring us together and make this a special opportunity to take things to the next level. And I don't know if many of you in the room should know this, but NDTA is celebrating their 70th anniversary, 75th anniversary this year. So how about a big round of applause for NDTA for their 75th anniversary. Is this mic working? Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's hearing me okay. And I also want to thank Kevin Tokarski, my wingman, and Admiral Busby with respect to MARAD, the Maritime Administration, and all the great support that they bring to the table, and AAPA. Certainly, John Young, I know he had to depart, but I'm looking forward to matching wits with him and the rest of the team. And General Broadmeadow, again, your support to the Army component and to everything that we're trying to do, the fact that you're here with us all the way to the end, speaks volumes of how important what we're here to do is, and how important not only it is to General Broadmeadow, but as he said yesterday, to General Lyons. We are a key ingredient to the success of U.S. Transportation Command, and we all have to come together to make that happen. And so again, this is a team of teams. So when it says Surface Warriors Unite up there on the chart, everyone in this room, from my standpoint, and my team hears it all the time, we're all surface warriors. If we're getting after the mission sets that we're talking about in here, we are all surface warriors when we come together to make it happen. And I also want to do a shout out to my brigade and battalion commanders who are here that I know you're going to interface with at the tip of the spear. What you should have picked away or taken away from them is they have their professionalism, their passion, their desire to want to make this mission happen with all of you. And you heard them talk about the connection with the fourth component, which is all of you represented in this room, and the synergy, and when that comes together, we just make big things happen. And so, again, I just want to thank my brigade and battalion commanders for what they're doing, but more importantly, the synergy that's occurring with the fourth component out there at the tip of the spear, because that's where it all happens. Absolutely. So I got a few visuals here that will hopefully bring a few wave-top level thoughts together, and then and I'll see if I can't synthesize this a little bit. So if we can move to the next chart, please. So again, I told you up front, this is a warfighting forum. We are going to fight. If we go to war, we're going to fight by, with, and through our seaports, our strategic seaports. That's how we're going to war. And for me, I fight through brigade and battalion commanders. And they are going to be nesting with all of you as the fourth component. And that's a quote from General Lyons right up there, and you can see what his number one priority is. It's warfighting readiness. And everything we're here to do in the last 2 days was to enable warfighting readiness. and build the comprehensive readiness necessary, the capability and capacity in order to make that happen. And so it's pretty clear guidance. When I read this quote, that's Commander's intent. And so what we have to do when we get Commander's intent is move out and make that happen. And I can certainly feel the passion and the energy to do that with all of us in the sidebars that I've had throughout the last couple days, and also through the keynotes and the speeches. Next chart, please. I wanted to throw this chart up here because General Broadmeadow showed you the bucket charts yesterday from General Lyons. Okay, and he lined it up with the nodes and the routes, you know, the global distribution network, and then the middle bucket was the capabilities and capacity, and then the other bucket on the far right was the global C2, that command and control, which was so vital. It's like a center of gravity, if you will. So if you start on the left of this chart, what you see there is that is the nodes and the routes. That's the global distribution network. And that's where we live, team. All of us live right there. We are at the nodes. That is our key terrain. We talk about conveyances, planes and ships. We are the connectors. So when you think of the Army component and you think of SDDC, think of us as the connectors. Conveyances and connectors. Our job is to pitch and catch those conveyances and turn those into strategic relevance, which is on the far right. And the only way you can do that is through global command and control. But there's a lot of opportunities for relevance on the far right. We've already talked about those numbers in terms of the different ports we're going to be pushing things through, whether you're an alternate port, whether you're a strategic seaport. 80 brigade combat team moves a year. And I did tell some of the folks in the crowd, next time I come to an audience like this, I'm going to bring a very nice cartoon of a brigade combat team and what that looks like, how big it is, and the rest of those types of things, because everybody has probably different things popping in their head as to what a brigade combat team is, and they come in various shapes and sizes. And there's combat aviation brigades, fires brigades, there's a whole host of different engineering brigades with big ugly things that they need to move around. So we need to unpack that and make sure that everybody understands what that is. And then of course right in the middle there, that's us. So when General Lyons talks about capabilities and capacities and he's talking about planes and ships, when he's looking at the Army component, it's about these intermodal capabilities, those 8 readiness levers that I was talking about. The acronym TRACS that I threw out there. You know, trucks, total force integration, rail, analysis and systems, ammunition, containers, ships, and strategic seaports. And again, the linchpin in all this is the strategic seaports, because that's what brings us all together to accomplish our common purpose, which is to move, deploy, and sustain the armed forces to deliver readiness and lethality at speed. And we talked a lot about speed. Okay, and lethality is what our force needs. We're not a fighting force if we don't have that. And you can see how speed matters across the bottom of the chart. So that's how we line up against the buckets. When you look at how General Lyons is looking at things in the global space. So he's got Military Sealift Command, they line up to those buckets, and so does Air Mobility Command. But this is how we in this room on the surface side, on the Army component, line up in this space. Next chart. This is just another visual of us being at that key terrain. Those orange dots are where we have people physically today. But what everybody in the room should understand, we have 17 strategic seaports, we have 23 ports in CONUS when you include the military ports that we own. And then if you go CONUS, there's 180 ports that we can put, that we have SNRTS contracts with, that we can flex our muscles and put our surface warriors at those ports. So we don't have to physically be at the ports that we're at on those orange dots. We can flex to multiple different ports. And quite frankly, in the CONUS space, we're growing that. Even in Europe right now, we're not going through the usual suspects, the Rotterdams, the Bremerhavens, the Antwerps. We're using them the heck of a lot. But now we're opening up the aperture in Europe. We're doing the same in the Pacific, and we're test firing things in the CONUS space. So again, what you're seeing up there in the white lines, those are the shipping lines, and those are the cyber cables that are running across the ocean. So again, our job is to be the connectors, to pitch and catch those conveyances and turn that into strategic relevance. And as you can see, we're an economy of force mission. We only have 5,100 surface warriors to do it, and that's why we need the 4th component, because you're going to bring that added depth and capacity to the equation that we need. Next chart, please. I just wanted to line up the tracks at the bottom. That's that acronym there. And it's a little like E equals MC squared. I know I got T2 and I have the A2 and all that. That's the SDDC version of E equals MC squared. And of course that means kinetics, right? So we got to get the speed going. Einstein said nothing happens till something moves. He's a pretty smart guy. And so that's what we have to do. And across the bottom right there, those are the tracks right across the bottom. And if you work your way up, what you see is the end-to-end process. And that's all of us. So we have to make sure that we're keeping those 8 readiness levers on the tracks. So that's another purpose for that acronym. It's not only a way to remember the levers, it's a way to, from a methodology standpoint, think we together, by all the things that we were talking about here over the last 2 days, we got to keep things on the tracks in order to achieve the speed of war intent that we're looking to do. And quite frankly, at the very top, it's dynamic force employment, which we know is at the national level is what we're looking to achieve and be able to do that rapidly and fast. Next chart. So now I'm going to toss a metaphor at you, and I use this with my team a lot. So I don't know if many of you in the room are rowers. If you aren't, I'll unpack this a little bit with you, but this is an 8-person rowing team, and I just talked to you about 8 levers, right? Now, if you're going to be a really good, the way this works at the collegiate level mostly is the people that make up an 8-person rowing team, they come from all walks of life. They can come from all across the different countries. They can come from different ecosystems. And what the coach has to do is has to put them in the vessel, and you got to find the right chemistry. So again, think of us as a team of teams. We all have different ecosystems that we've all come through. We all own one of these levers. And then we all have to get in the boat. And one thing you need to know about an 8-person rowing team is nirvana is if everybody in that boat is pulling their weight in unison. Just everybody is in full strength. And all oars are in the water and everybody is pulling. And they're pulling really, really hard. And in rowing lexicon, when everybody's got their oar in the water and everybody's pulling really hard, you get this thing, this nirvana state takes over the boat. There's full trust. Everybody believes in everybody else, and the strength and power of one pull all at once goes incredibly fast. And this nirvana state that everybody in the boat can feel is called swing. That's the lexicon, that's the term that they use in rowing. So my challenge to all of us is how do we get our swing? If we get our swing, going back to rowing, if we're lined up and we're going on a race, what happens is the boat that has their swing, the other boat could be doing 20 pulls a minute, and you could be doing 10 in 1 minute and going faster than the other boats. And that's because everybody's oars in the water, there's full trust, full unity of effort, and we are just moving at the speed of. And that's where we win. And that's where when you see a rowing team win, they got swing. And so what I'd ask all of us to do, as we walk away from here is think about that. We got to make sure every day through our brigade and battalion commanders interfacing with the 4th component that we got all those 8 levers in the water harmonized, synchronized, and we're going to move fast. So again, that's a metaphor that you can take with you, and I think that's the nirvana that we're looking to get to. How do we get our swing? And conferences like this and what we've been doing the last 2 days helps us get there. Next chart. Now another thing that happens, if one of the oars gets a kink, it's called a crab, and it catches something like that. There's a lot of things in the space out there that we've talked about today where you can catch a crab in that boat as you're rowing. And one of the oars kind of kinks up. And we talked about them today. Cyber, mission command, security, weather, reporting, all those types of things. I think those were unpacked through all the panels. And so through the subcommittees and through our actual practice and efforts, we can smooth out these kinks and make sure those oars stay in the water moving really, really fast. And the next chart, is just what I think. Please, if you could. The next chart, these are the things that will help us avoid the kinks. And these, I think, were themed and teased out over the course of the panels as well. We got to see ourselves. We got to understand what we look like. We got to understand what the real strength and power is of our ports. Where are those vulnerabilities? How do we assess readiness? Are we chasing the right metrics? Do we understand where everybody sits? So then we can come up with the right strategies to push things through. That's important. So we have to see ourselves, and we have to come to some understanding of how we do that through these different committees. And then all the way up to General Lyons, because he looks at me and he's like, give me your comprehensive readiness, General Farmen. And trust me, we got a dashboard, and it's tied to those 8 readiness levers. And we include Cyber and Mission Command to that. And I've briefed him through our scorecard and dashboard on those readiness levers and what's the capability, capacity, risk, and mitigation. We got to see ourselves to be able to do that holistically. And we have to anticipate. You know, again, this OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act. In today's world, it's anticipate, decide, act. If you observe and orient, the ship sailed. I think we're moving too fast. So I tell my team, hey, anticipate, decide, act. Because it's all about being left to boom. That's not a bumper sticker, that's a mindset. You know, the boom is when the flood hits. The boom is when Hurricane Florence hits, all that kind of stuff. It's what we do out here. That's where we win. It's what we're going to do out here in the left of boom space. It's going to make that speed of war move happen through Jacksport and achieve all the objectives that we're looking for. We're getting after the things that Bruce Bussler was talking about, solving all those problems, turning assumptions into facts. That's going to happen because we're left of boom and we're anticipating, we're seeing ourselves, we're communicating effectively, and those things are all starting to happen. That's how we're going to keep the kinks out of the oars and keep the oars in the water and everything moving at the right clip. So again, I think these are things that we've got to continue to work at, and we're going to get a lot of practice. Next chart. This was something else that I spoke about earlier in the opening remarks, and that's the 4 T's. You know, trust, teamwork, transparency, and a total approach. We need the full trust in that boat. In that we want to move at the speed of trust. When trust is high, cost is low, time, energy, we move faster. So now, just based on the relationships we formed over this week, we can pick up the phone and talk to each other, and things can move, and we can move quicker. We can solve problems faster. Teamwork goes without saying. You know, we're the ultimate team sport. And if you're not a team player, you're in the wrong business. And of course, transparency. One of the panels even teased out the transparency factor. You know, we got to see ourselves, and that causes us to be transparent. And that means bringing the ugly stuff up, you know, self-reporting when we have to, and getting the bad things out in the open so we can solve problems together. And then the total approach is that round down range. So it's not about the node to node. Okay, it's understanding that the real, I think Colonel Chris did a good job of lobbing some of those things out when he talked about, you know, how we had to deliver a strategic effect. Even in the midst of the crisis, we had to come together and be resilient to deliver an effect. We need to know what that effect is. We have to communicate that to the 4th component so the 4th component knows, and they can rally the troops and say, hey, the real prize is we got to deliver a strategic effect in Poland, and that's a round down range at a training area to bring a deterrent effect for the EUCOM commander, the European Command Commander. So that total approach is how I like our team to think. It's not about how good you did at your port. It's by being good at your port, keep your eye on the prize to make sure we got the round down range on time. Because if I'm pitching to another teammate who's catching and I send a bad thing, I'm part of the problem. Even though I might have cleared my port fast, I sent a soup sandwich to somebody else, that's a problem. Okay, because we have to make that mission happen. Next chart. I talked about the 3 ships. You see these sails right out on the front of the podium. Again, think Christopher Newport was a buccaneer, and his 3 ships brought the English settlers here to Jamestown. Think the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. Okay, discovering new horizons together is through the 3 ships, and that's what really that's kind of the DNA of what these things are all about, is looking everybody in the eye, talking to everybody offline, because we got to put wind in the sails of the 3 ships every day. And if we do, we're going to be left to boom. We're going to solve problems. We're going to do those things to work the kinks out. So I ask all of you to keep putting those wind in the sails. And I know my brigade and battalion commanders are going to do the same thing so that we can make sure that we're always ready and not reacting. Next. And what I'm looking for is, if we not only have 3 ships, is we want to build a battle group. We want to build an armada of ships. And the way we, so as we're sailing those 3 ships forward, the next ship sails in and it's leadership. And the next ship that sails in is ownership. And the next ship that sails in is stewardship. And then another ship comes in and it's called followership. Because you can't be a great leader unless you're a good follower. And we all have to relate to that in our own way, okay? And the fact of the matter is, we want to put wind in the sails every day of those ships. And if we're doing that, what's going to happen? We're going to get speed. And we're going to go fast. And we're going to move quickly. And we're going to solve problems. And so I challenge my team every day to put wind in those sails every day. And make sure you're owning it. Because we want that armada sailing. Because I love Secretary Mattis's quote in his very simple speak. If you can't move, you're not lethal. We talk about delivering readiness and lethality, #DRL, those types of things. The bottom line is, if you can't move, you're not lethal. And we got troops on the other end of something that need lethality, where our nation needs it at the time and place of our choosing. And we got to put wind in the sails, we got to move at speed, and we got to get it there. Next chart. Which brings me to the close here and just the takeaways. I'll start with speed. So again, speed is an acronym. I hate to throw these different acronyms, but I did this for my team, and I think it synthesizes a few things together. So the S is being strategic in execution. That's what we're doing now. That's being left of boom. Okay? That's being anticipatory. That's thinking through the problems in advance. That's the S. So if we're truly achieving delivering at speed, this is what it means. Projecting power. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't about cargo being king, but it's more about projecting power and delivering that effect. The first E is enabling warfighting readiness, because that's General Lyon's #1 priority, and that's our #1 obligation, is to enable warfighting readiness every day. The second E is what all of us are, which are experts in intermodal operations. And we have to live up to that every day. We have to be true professionals every day in our craft, experts in our craft, so that we can deliver the D, quite frankly, which is dynamic force employment. This is dynamic times. It's a dynamic space, and we must be dynamic. And our nation is counting on us. And I think General Broadmeadow laid this out great at lunch the other day, dynamic force employment, what that meant. And our job on the surface side is to make sure we're integrating and synchronizing things to get it there. So then a couple quotes from that I just was thinking of rapidly last night, and a couple of them were mentioned on the panel right here. If you've seen a port, you've seen a port. I remembered that one. And that's going to stick with me, because everybody out here has its own ecosystem, and that's why we're test firing these ports, because it's not just the capabilities and capacity, it's the relationships, that have to form there to fight our way through all the different types of things. We win left of boom, you heard me say that, and we're going to fight by, with, and through our ports. That's the truth. It's going through us. And then it's going to be sustained by, with, and through the ports. So not only are we deploying and projecting at the time and place of our choosing, we got to sustain it by, with, and through our ports, and we got to make sure we can do that effectively. And then, for me, I know I've taken a lot of notes, and I talked to a few people in the sidebars, and I said, we've heard a lot, so let it marinate. You're gonna, after you leave and you're flying home on the plane, you got to review your notes and let it sink in. You got to let this thing marinate a little bit. And then what I'd ask all of you to do as you think about that is start to bin them: strategic, operational, tactical. What are those things that we need to get after strategically, operationally, and tactically, you know, and we can unpack these things through subcommittees. Sometimes it's policy issues, it's contractual things, it's the stevedoring issues, it's the training issues. Stevedoring, strategic, operational, tactical, what do we need to do? You know, and on down the line. And I know my book is full of notes, and so I got my team in the audience here too, and we're all taking notes, so we're going to synthesize it, and I know Kevin will too, you know, of course with MARAD and AAPA and everybody else. And I was talking to nuns about this in the audience too, the NPRN and all of that types of things. So then we can go out and leverage this whole architecture and apparatus that exists and really turn, you know, ideas and challenges into actionable, tangible solutions and outcomes. Because we need to be output oriented. Again, this isn't about high-fiving through the hallways. This is about making sure we get the right, you know, we're teasing out the right issues that we can put some teeth in and then put some leadership on it to see if we can't move the football in some areas that I know I heard in here that need some work. And I know General Broadmeadow and I will chat a lot about some things on the way back as we're flying back to Scott Air Force Base today. And then last but not least, thank you. My sincere thanks to each and every one of you every day, and I'll try and get to every port that I possibly can, you know, within that I can manage. And I'm going to try and get to Port Readiness Committee meetings, and I want to thank the Coast Guard, you know, for, you know, I was really inspired by Captain Carroll the other day. He had me fired up. I mean, I was like unbuckling my seatbelt in the chair. I was about jumped up and high-fived him. I was like, I couldn't have said it better. But, I mean, if the Coast Guard is bringing that kind of leadership to the PRCs, now we got something. And my brigade and battalion commanders know they got to be right there with it. You know, so, you know, that's how we're going to take things to the next level. But, you know, I just got to leave here and say thank you for making the time, the effort, bringing the passion. I think it was like, because you give a you-know-what, I think was said. I think everybody in here gives a you-know-what. And that's what matters, because our nation's counting on us. And again, sincere thanks. And I know my brigade and battalion commanders thank you as well. And I'll leave it at that, Admiral Brown. And if there are any questions, I mean, I could take questions, but I was just trying to do what I could to synthesize some of what we heard at a high enough level so that we can kind of begin to reflect on this. So again, thank you all very much.
Thank you, General Farmen. We won't let you down. How's that? At this time, I'm going to ask Kevin Tokarski to come up. And Kevin heads up the National Port Readiness Network Steering Group, which will meet, I think, at 1:15 today over at the Student Union, the David Student Union. But I'd like Kevin to come up and give some of his thoughts. He's also the associate administrator for Strategic Sealift Maritime at the Maritime Administrator. And but Kevin's been on this journey. I guess I've joined it about probably 7 or 8 years ago with him, and it's been a lot of fun. But Kevin's got a heck of a lot of credibility with the entire enterprise. So over to you, Kevin.
Thank you. Sort of. How the hell do you follow that? Damn. Man, I really drew the short straw on that. I mean, you can't summarize any better than really as General Farmen did. So on my way up here, I gave him our command coin. And the reason I did that was because kind of letting him know that our Sealift, and we look at our Sealift programs across, and so it's a big S on Sealift in that, we focus on being ready and reliable anytime, anywhere. And that's a mission that we have to do in peacetime and in wartime. And that's what we are here for. So as well as, sir, in all that we represent in Sealift, and that's a big we of our industry partners and all to be able to support that with that. I thought about going through and recognizing some of the folks and the individuals that did this. I started a list and I realized I'm going to miss somebody, so I'm not going to do that. from that standpoint. From the MARAD team, we've got our port gateways here. Most of them are here. And that's very important for us to have them here. And I know that that connection's been made by folks here with them to use them and leverage them with that. I've got to, in my ops side of the house and that, Russ Krause and Bill Cagg and Ken Jones have been doing a lot to be able to support this. So I was kind of adding it up in my head. There's about like 10 MARAD staff, and then there's one. And my force of one, and most of you know him as Nuns Jane. And Nun has done a significant amount of work to help me in the last 5 years, really. And I'll tell you, he was at the charge of a colonel that I worked with a long time ago at Transcom when I was there, who kind of buttonholed me, grabbed me by the shoulders and said, you know, Kevin, this is kind of messed up. We gotta get this re-energized and back on track. And actually, we gotta step up to the plate and be ready to deliver this National Port Readiness Network and the strategic ports. He knows who that is, and I thank him for that because I needed that. I needed a friend to tell me that we weren't doing the job well enough. And so I reached out to Nuns and I asked him to take this on, and he's my guy I go to often when I've got difficult challenges and that, and he's done a great job with that. Sometimes he can be difficult to deal with. I take that with a grain of salt, but he gets the job done for us, and he's been a great asset for us. So Nuns, I thank you for that. I've got some notes. I'm not going to go through them because what I really like to do is just sort of follow on to General Farmen's comments quickly. And by the way, the NPRN steering group meeting is a federal group only. We're going to start at 1300. We will be in the David Stamp Union, the building that we started 2 days ago in the boardroom there. So that's going to be 1300. We will finish by 1400, I promise. So we heard a lot about infrastructure in the ports here and about the physical investments and the advances that are changing the operation of the waterfront, and for us to recognize the changes that are taking place on the waterfront. Semi-automation, Bill Woodhour gave us a nice presentation about that. Also about the cargo mix and the labor aspects in the port, and that we also think about the suppliers and the maintainers and repairers that also are in that port infrastructure. I lean on them quite a bit to keep my aged fleet ready as we can. Talked an awful lot about robust PRCs. And I want to stand with Captain Carroll and General Farmen and get in and sit in more of those PRC meetings that we have. That enthusiasm and dedication and commitment, it's clear they live this stuff and they believe it. And we absolutely need those committees to do that work. And I need your help and charge you to step in and do that. The rail lines asked me, said, can we sit in a PRC meeting? I said, absolutely, please do. Speed and synchronization, clearly, we talked about synchronization of rail and some of the changes that are taking place there. Chaos and disruption. Being an old Get Smart fan, and I like to bring up chaos again. But how that disruption is going to influence the environment and operationalizing the NPRN. A quote somebody said, we need to prepare for America's next worst day. We need to be thinking about how we operationalize the National Port Readiness Network. Maneuver, not movement. Very key distinction between that. That private ports that we have are national assets. And a lot of people don't get that, and we need to be communicating that our ports are national assets for us, and they need to understand that. Labor, the trained, ready, reliable, equipped with the right tools, and as a dedicated workforce. The cyber protection and investment, and investments for changes in cyber. Not just cyber today, but cyber in the future. We need to be thinking about that and recognizing the interdependencies there. And then lastly, in the areas of information and coordination aspects of the conference, I know everybody here, right? We all learned something here. We all learned, in fact, for me, I learned a lot. I learn a lot every time I attend one of these sessions. First session that I chaired like this was back in 2009. And I was introducing Secretary LaHood. We were having a port workshop meeting. We were in the FAA auditorium, similar to this. And LaHood asked me, he said, Kevin, when's the last time we did this? And I said, about like 2000 or 2001. He said, how come we haven't done one in all these years? So I said, well, during that time period, I said, we've actually been exercising and after the OIF and OEF operation. I said, well, we've kind of been doing it. But that happens But this effort where we actually came together to actually just plan and connect all the pieces together in a big tent environment, we hadn't been doing that with that. So we started that again. We got that going again. So it's in the last 10 years we've been doing something like this about every 2.5 years for that. So for the NDTA reaching out to us and saying, hey, what do you think about this? Hats off to it. It's been outstanding, no doubt. But so then I thought about, so what are we going to do next? General Farmen talked about, we are going to work on from the NPRM, we are going to draw out that list of those that are strategic and operational and tactical action items for us to work on. And we will develop a list. We'll make sure that we have transparency of that so you can look at that and you can see what we're doing from the federal level, which is going to work its way down towards you, our industry sectors and at the ports directly, to work down that list to see how we're doing. And if we're not doing it fast enough, come kick us in the butt to tell us we got to work on this and make sure we have the priorities right too for both the near actions that we can take on that have significant impact and change versus ones that are going to take a little bit longer. So what will you do? And not only what will you do, what are you going to do different after attending this conference? Is there somebody that you're going to want to reach out to go talk to? Maybe you saw them on a panel and said, I don't want to go talk to that person. That's important about the follow-on to this. We don't just go back to our silos and to our ports and all that, but thinking about this and as you go back and thinking, I've got a different viewpoint about this and how this all fits and how this works, and I need to reach out, I need to talk to people, I need to connect better from that sense. And what do we want to tell them? And what do we want to tell people about what we saw here, what we heard here? As I said at the beginning, we all know this business part of that. We know the importance of it. We're very, very small. We need to be telling other people about this. The strategic ports and that, they do a good job of bringing in their port community. There's citizens who pay for those ports and give them the license and the authorities to be able to operate. They need to tell them about what we're doing and why this is important. Not only from a national defense perspective, but obviously from an economic security perspective. And there is no dividing line between the economic and the national security aspects to that. We've got to reach out at the local level, the state, the federal, congressional level, and that as well. We need CODELs in visiting the ports and taking a look at it with a different lens on here about what strategic ports are. I have my own challenges within my own department about this mission set here from a big, broad national security perspective and that as well. So I'll ask you to be thinking about that. Is you need to bring people in. You need to tell your neighbor about this. I tell my staff all the time, tell your neighbors and friends about what you do and why it's important to the nation in many different fronts. The communication part of it, we do a real good job in this room. We probably don't do as good of a job on the outside. For the people that make decisions, that vote, that fund programs, and that pass laws and statutes and regulations and all of that. So I think helping to get that message out is exceptionally important with that as well. Again, hats off Christopher Newport University. You've heard it at every panel. Fantastic venue for this. I think we're going to be back, right? If we got it. This is the place, I think. And last thing, it's a great venue because everybody keeps talking about ships, and I love it when those Army general officers and even we get the Air Force 4-stars and that they talk about ships left all the time. That's terrific. I love it. So thank you all very much. Back to you, Andy.